Welcome, everybody, to our webinar on balancing customer experience and revenue. My name is Greg Fossen, President Principal Analyst at X Media Research, and we're happy to have you with us today. Before we get started, I wanted to go over some housekeeping items for the webinar. First point, be sure to stay to the end. We're giving away a Roku streaming stick, and you have to be present to win, and we'll be announcing the winner in the webinar before it's over. So make sure you stay logged in for the entire time. We are also welcoming you to ask questions throughout the show. On your dashboard, you should be able to type those in, and we'll get as those come in, we'll present those to our moderator and to our panelists. And we will try to address every question that is asked. So don't be shy, just keep the questions coming, and we'll definitely get to them. Those are important to us. So welcome again to our webinar. We have today with us moderating the panel Colin Dixon, a founder of Endscreen Media, and we have Anil Jain, Senior Vice President and General Manager from Brightcove. We're thrilled to have you both with us here today for the panel. And we all know that the connected TVs and this explosion in multi-screen viewing are altering the television viewing landscape. And publishers and broadcasters, this means a dramatic shift in viewing habits, which presents challenges and opportunities. And I promise I'm not going to steal Colin's thunder. I'm going to turn the time over to him directly to kind of set the stage and the backdrop for this discussion. So Colin, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Greg, and welcome everybody. Yes, we are here to talk about balancing customer experience and revenue, and we really want to talk a lot about advertising in video because this is such an important topic. Now, right now, there's a tremendous amount of focus on subscription VOD services, but that's not going to stay the case. We're going to see a lot of changes, I think, going over the next few years. And let's take a look at how big those changes could be. Well, at the end of 2014, there were about 374 million homes that had OTT video services. And the good news is that virtually every single one of those homes accessed ad-supported video online. And by 2020, that's going to double. The number of homes will double that are watching ad-supported online video. So that, by the way, is almost half of worldwide TV households. So what does this mean for revenue? Well, online TV and video advertising is 8.3 billion at the end of 2014, and it's forecast to more than double by 2020 to 18 billion. And I suppose the most significant point here is while SVOD is driving revenue a lot now, by 2020, advertising is going to be just as important as SVOD, and I firmly believe will eclipse SVOD there soon after. Now, let's see, TV ad revenue is clearly following eyeballs online, and what that means is that by 2017 we're actually going to start to see that the revenue transferring from television to online video in quite substantial numbers. So that means that there could be a lot of money coming our way in online advertising supported VOD services. And you see the primary two markets for TV ad spend right now is the US and in Japan. And that will still be true in 2020, though, as you can see from some of those numbers, there's a lot of growth going on. What's good here is that YouTube is really helping educate the world, and many regions which don't today typically have a lot of advertising supported window, YouTube is helping them see that advertising can work and really educating them on the value of free ad-supported video. And at this point, I want to bring in Anil Jain, who's the SVP and GM of Brightcove, of course. And Anil, you have a pretty interesting perspective on this growth as well. So do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just a comment I want to make on the the earlier point you made about the SVOD revenue and AVOD revenue, rising and growing to potentially eclipse SVOD. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it's important when we look at and read all of the reports out there about the rise of subscription-based OTT services. They're phenomenally stating the number of new services launching almost every week, and the reality is, I think moving to OTT is definitely obviously a big trend, going direct to consumer across devices and providing the content free of the constraints of existing carrier deals or carriage deals or rights restrictions. So I agree that we'll see that. I think the thing that's worth pointing out, and this supports the argument that there will be a significant growth in advertising-supported video business models, is that the bulk of those SVOD revenues that are projected are concentrated or will be concentrated in a very small number of major providers. Obviously, we're looking at Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Instant Video, and then depending where you are geographically, the SVOD services that are likely to be subscribed to are probably going to be a number of top tier kind of media brands, and so that's going to be the vast majority of where we think the subscription revenue is going to be. That, by the way, that does not mean that there will not be niche and genre focused specific SVOD services. It's just that the potential share of market that they command will be small relative to those big providers. And that being said, your points about the growth in advertising supported VOD are right on the money, so to speak. We're seeing that growth across the international regions in which we do business. It certainly has been the case, in North America for a number of years as well. You're right that YouTube has educated a number of folks with respect to online video and advertising. I think that many of our premium publishers that are out there, many premium content companies, benefit certainly from that consumer understanding experience, but simultaneously are focused on and invested in making sure that the advertising that they deliver does not compromise the user experience. Because in the end, the thing that they care about the most is how do we provide the best, most engaging, most compelling consumer video experience, regardless of what platform our viewers are on.
Exactly. Yeah, and in fact, the great thing, of course, is that the ads that we're beginning to deliver online now are much more relevant, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that comes down to the question of relevance, but also how are those ads designed, right? I think we've kind of all learned, it's the end of 2015 here. The last couple of years, there's been a big focus on what is the right length of the ad, what's the right nature of the ad, how do we get our brand impressions or our specific value proposition communicated through creative that is designed specifically to work within the context of the content and the platform in which the content is being viewed. So, enter in 6-second ads, 12-second ads, 15-second ads, just to talk about duration. Obviously, there's more interest in vertical video now for mobile phones. There's and none of this is set in stone, right? It's a big open space for a lot of creativity and innovation. And the thing that I think we cannot forget or we cannot neglect to understand is that it's not just about the publishers. It's about the publishers, the consumers, the agencies, and the media buyers, and then the advertisers themselves. It's a very large value chain that is figuring out how to shift their advertising dollars to the increasing viewership online.
Indeed, and Neil, the mobile opportunity is particularly interesting, right? You had some pretty interesting data here. I've just thrown it up on the slides. Why don't you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, certainly. I think we've been looking at, stepping away from video for just a second. I think we have seen over the last couple of years, a lot of data that talks about the amount of time consumers around the world, and it varies by country, but they spend on accessing the internet or engaging with the internet, engaging with content on the internet via various devices. And I think across the board we've seen that mobile has in fact eclipsed desktop. Now, stepping back into video, what we're seeing is that trend is carrying over. And as consumers spend more and more time with these beautiful devices that can, deliver and play back HD quality video and provide, great experiences over networks, whether they're cellular or, wireless internet networks, more and more consumers are engaging with video content, right? And what's really interesting is that it's not just snackable short form content. We had several years ago, back in fact, when I was part of Unicorn Media before Brightcove bought Unicorn Media, we worked with a very large sports network, and what they were seeing is that they, even back in, let's say, 2012, mobile views of their video content had gone past 50% relative to desktop. So mobile video viewing online was exceeding desktop, and started to grow dramatically. And to this, to fast forward to 2015, it's a significant leader in terms of device consumption relative to other platforms that are out there. This is now happening across the board with short form content, but it has started to actually grow in longer form content as well, including episodic TV serials, etc., where people are watching the entire long form video presentation on their iPhone 6 Plus, right, or their Galaxy S4. So as a result, advertising, as the business model to monetize those views, has grown pretty significantly. And year over year, between Q2 of 2015, Q2 of 2014, ad views on smartphones grew over 100%. And expanding beyond mobile to talk about the rise in consumption across OTT devices. So connected living room devices like Apple TVs, Roku's, Fire TVs, Chromecasts, even smart TVs. The ad views on those devices, has gone up nearly 200% in the same time period. So I think everyone, in the end, when we talk about things starting with the experience, everything starts from the experience you want to deliver. And once you deliver that experience, you facilitate the adoption of video consumption across these platforms by consumers. And as the consumers get there and they're watching, more and more content, in their hours in their day on these other devices, you have a commensurate shift in advertising dollars that follows, and that's what we're seeing right now.
That's the amazing thing. It's not that television viewing is dropping dramatically. I mean, it is falling, there's no question, but it seems like it's giving us more time in our day to actually consume video. And so actually the total amount of video that we're watching is actually expanding slightly. So this is a pretty interesting trend. But all is not well in that particular garden. Right, we have some challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a number of challenges. I think that again, you kind of hear me say this ad nauseum. It's still about the experience, and the challenges. If you flip forward, yeah, thank you. Is that if you take it from the, we've already talked about the consumer perspective, which is they want a consistent video consumption experience across, when they're engaging with their content, regardless of what device platform they're on. And, the power has shifted dramatically to the consumer, right? So every media publisher, content company out there needs to provide that content across those platforms, and they need to monetize that content, mostly, through advertising. And in doing so, they have a challenge and an opportunity, which is that all of the viewing and the viewership that happens across a number of platforms creates tremendous opportunity for more ad inventory, right? But the key is, how do you unlock that inventory? How do you maximize and optimize that inventory and fill it with appropriate advertising without compromising the user experience. So that's certainly part of it. Ensuring a quality playback experience is key, and it's really not just about how do I prepare my content and deliver it, but if it's advertising supported, how do I ensure that injecting advertising into that experience doesn't, sustains the viewership of the user, gives them, and this is kind of the terminology we use, gives them a seamless television-like experience, so that you have the analog to cable television, where moving from content to ads and back again feels very natural, right? So there's no jarring experience. There's a lot of different factors involved. You don't have latency in the delivery of ads, timeouts, blackouts, spinning wheels, which and buffering, which anybody involved in kind of measuring quality of service or quality of experience analytics knows has a dramatic impact on abandonment, right, of consumers watching your content. And then, of course, the thing that has got everyone's attention over the last few months, but has been a situation for a number of years, is the rise of ad blockers. And so all of those challenges face publishers that are looking to deliver ad-supported video across platforms.
Yeah, indeed, and the interesting thing about ensuring a quality playback experience, it is really tough, right, to do that. There are so many variables that can go wrong in the delivery, from everything from network congestion to you're just flat out delivering to a very old cell phone and it can't keep up, right? There are just so many opportunities for that quality experience to just not go well.
Yeah, and Colin, if I may add to that, I think it's important for us to not paint with a broad brush across every challenge. I think that publishers that are in the business of delivering content to their consumers watch every aspect of that experience, or should measure and evaluate every aspect of the experience they're delivering to understand where there are challenges with their specific experience, and not so for instance, you mentioned older phones and devices. You're absolutely right. Those are still real factors. I think that to some extent you have some consumers who are still on kind of old generation technology who have a little more willingness to put up with certain issues because they understand that they're a couple generations behind in technology. I mean, and of course that's a kind of a North American perspective, perhaps. But when you start, having consumers that are on the latest and greatest technology and devices over the last few years experience buffering or have to restart streams to engage the content, you've jarred their experience. And whether or not users think about this stuff consciously, there is a kind of impulsive, instinctive reaction, which is, hey, I don't think I'll go back and watch content on that service again because I haven't had a good experience, or I'm so frustrated I'm going to go find the content somewhere else. And these things add up dramatically, right? So whether you're delivering it via an app that ends up getting bad ratings on the app stores that are out there, whether word of mouth spreads, or whether you have users that kind of subscribe or sign up or download and install your various video app experiences, whether they actually ever engage with that app again. And so those that the keeping your customers and consumers happy and providing that seamless television-like experience translates to real dollars in a very, very significant way.
It sure does. But you know what? We started to talk about ad blockers, and I think we should talk a little bit more about them. They're really a lot of people using them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think many people who have been following this have seen the data that various organizations have published. But the key here is that it's not insignificant. Now, if we can go back a little bit in history, I kind of alluded to this a few minutes ago, but ad blockers have been around for a while, for a number of years. And I think we can take the position to say that, hey, ad blockers originally were not created as kind of this malicious attempt to counter publishers. The real genesis, and I'm kind of saying this in a general fashion because I'm sure that's not necessarily 100% true everywhere, but at a high level, ad blockers were created really as a tool to protect consumers from the onslaught of really intrusive, irrelevant, experience-compromising advertising, mostly display, right? Advertising, and data, and tracking pixels that just were loaded on top of one another on web pages, right? And so you would try and load a site, and you'd have to wait because all of the advertising pixels and advertising content was loading first before you even get to the content you were interested in, and that's really a very, I think we'd all agree, very, very frustrating experience. And so that was really what gave rise to the creation of ad blockers. The problem we have is that ad blockers are kind of a blunt instrument, right? They're kind of a brute force approach, kind of taking an all or nothing approach to blocking advertising. And the premium publishers that are out there that are looking to provide high quality experiences for their consumers, and are looking to provide it in an economic model that allows both the wide and broad consumption of their content, but also the ability to fund the development of the content, rely on advertising. And unfortunately, the ad blocker approaches that are out there really hurt the economics of those business models by kind of taking that all or nothing approach, which blocks their ads. And so, the data that's out there from various places is that there are nearly 200 million active monthly users of ad blockers. That number, I'm sure, is growing dramatically. In September, when Apple talked about iOS 9 and enabled content blocking, that followed on the heels earlier in the summer of the announcements by a number of ad blockers that they were going to do mobile-specific ad blocking apps that you could install. It expanded the domain in which this battle was taking place, and because of all the press about it, more and more consumers are learning today what ad blockers are, right? And so the growth is there, and there have been a number of executives across broadcasters, publishers, pure play digital media companies, net new OTT services, et cetera, that are all focused on how do we address the ad blocker issue, and what's the right way to do it. And it's a bit of a challenge that some are focused on right now, and others all have it in their plans to focus on for 2016.
You bet. And if you look at the numbers for the US, it's pretty shocking, and you're absolutely right. In the US today, about 41% have installed an ad blocker in their browser. Internationally, this is not restricted to the US. 30% of internet users worldwide have one. And as you would expect, it's the millennials, particularly the younger millennials, the 18 to 24-year-olds, that are particularly attracted to installing ad blockers. 63% have installed an ad blocker, and of course they're available for both PC and for mobile devices. And the remarkable thing about these is they are so effective at removing the ads that somebody with one may not even be aware that site is ad supported, right? I mean, this is pretty much disaster if that's your business model.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think we have some of the quotes that we had up on the screen. You've seen others where people are really saying that, look, fundamentally the ad blocking approach could, as it gets further widespread, right? I mean, we had a stat early on. I think we said 1.6 or 1.7 billion people are watching online video today. That's 20% of the world's population, right? And 200 million of them today are active ad blocker users. increasingly there will be more and more. And so now you have this huge impact on, which translates to lost advertising revenue, which, there is a cycle, there's a circle here of dry advertising revenue enabling the creation of great content, right? And so I think that, a way we often talk about it is, if you take a poll of the people on this webinar, or any room full of folks that are listening to a conversation like this, and you'd ask them, how many of you are going to, are willing to pay for subscription services, for over-the-top content, and many of them raise their hand. But when you ask them, if they're $5 to $10 a pop, how many of you will, to watch all your content, get all your content, subscribe to 20 of those, and very few are going to. So the reality is there is a need for both business models and hybrid business models as well to coexist, and ad-supported. While the medium has changed and a lot of the specifics are changing in terms of the type and nature of content and the delivery of that content and the platforms on which that content is consumed, the business model of getting in front of those consumers with relevant advertising to engage them in your products and services and your brands is still it's still a universal model, a global model that we don't see going away for a long time. And without it, there will be significant harm caused to publishers around the world.
Okay, so we talked about ad blockers as being one of the biggest challenges. There are other challenges. Multi-platform for another instance is a big challenge, right, Anil?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think the way to think about multi-platform viewing is, again, you want to deliver consistent ad-supported video experiences. Not every connected device platform and not every mobile device out there is made the same. Different operating systems, different device capabilities, different versions, and different OEMs. And so, as a result, there's tremendous device fragmentation and platform proliferation that leads to a lot of complexity, right? And complexity is at the heart of kind of the media business today, in terms of all of the challenges that are presented to media publishers. A couple of them, I can call out very specifically, right? So, just in mobile alone, right? And then I'll talk about connected devices. But in mobile, whether this is mobile web, through a browser or mobile apps, there are so many nuances and variations, especially Android, where you run into situations in which your client-side, your traditional client-side ad insertion through plugins or SDKs can run into a lot of challenges, right? Obviously, I should call it that client-side ad insertion has in fact been the predominant form of ad-supported video monetization across desktop and mobile for some time. But while mobile, while in desktop you worry about browser versions and browser compatibility, in mobile it gets even more complex because of all the variables I talked about earlier. And some of the things you run into, since the client-side ad plugin is looking to make a request to the ad server, source the ad, and then deliver the ad while keeping kind of the content connection with the content source in place, you run into situations where if, like the example you presented earlier, you're on a cellular network in downtown Manhattan, you might start playing the content, and when it's time to go to an ad break, there is a delivery issue because it's taking too long to fetch the ad, taking too long to deliver the ad. This could result in a pause. At best, it could result into the spinning wheel of death of a buffering wheel. It could result in black screen. It could crash the app. And from a publisher perspective and advertiser perspective, you could run into reconciliation issues if you believe that the ad was delivered, but the consumer never saw it, right? So who gets paid as well. But more importantly, you've really compromised the user experience.
Indeed. But there's one place where user experience is absolutely, if it's critical on mobile, it's even more critical on the television, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. And so to that end, this has been the year of the growth of connected, TV devices, and more online video being consumed, in the family room. And so this was actually the year, I should mention, in January I moved into a new house and we cut the cord, finally, right? And my family doesn't miss it, honestly, because we subscribe to a few services, we do on-demand content, and there's so much out there that we really don't kind of miss it. Now I think in the case of sports, if we were more avid sports spectators, we'd probably subscribe to a service specifically for that. But there has been tremendous growth in terms of the usage of these devices, the uptake in buying the latest devices, and over 70% of internet users in the U.S. alone are watching content on streaming devices. Now, when it comes to the issue with multi-platform, advertising and video delivery, the problem of doing client-side ad insertion and providing consistent ad experience, or an ad experience that's consistent with the video experience, becomes further exacerbated. Some of those platforms don't really do a good job of supporting client-side ad logic, and some of them work well with certain ad servers and ad providers and ad networks. Some of them don't. You have the challenge of you're watching on your big screen at home, and if you've got 1080p content, but you end up with a 720 ad, that's a jarring, really poor quality experience. And in some platforms you can't even do client-side ad insertion. So what this really moves everyone towards, and it's finally kind of coming of age, is the move to doing server-side ad insertion, as opposed to client-side ad insertion, where you're actually abstracting the complexity of having the ad logic on the connected TV apps back to the cloud, and doing it consistently in one place, regardless of which platform you're delivering to. And you cut out kind of the back and forth communication that is subject to errors, and deliver a single cohesive, contiguous stream that has both content and ads already in it, through a server-side stitched monetized stream. Yeah, this slide that you just put up actually kind of shows the difference between traditional client-based ad insertion, where you see the communication happening with the content stream, the ad server, the ad stream, or the ad repository, if you will, and how it's being played back, versus delivering a single stream to the device and the player, where all of the ad and content source communication, the ad decision server communication is all handled in the cloud.
And I think it's probably worth spending a moment on just highlighting how important the difference between these two are, Anil, because when you think about it, this is all completely invisible to the person who's viewing the video, but it turns out that the way ads are typically inserted today is a big load on that client, right? There's so much back and forth. So when you hit that ad break, suddenly your client goes and starts talking to a completely different server to find the ad. It has to wait for that server to get in sync with it and then deliver the ad. And then at the end, it has to go back again to the original video stream. And as we know, with adaptive bitrate protocols, that could mean that you go back to a very poor quality stream and then ramp back up to a very high quality stream. And all of this just conspires to make an extremely problem-fraught delivery system that can really give a poor performance to the viewer. And the great thing about switching to a server-side solution is it's a single stream. None of this switching happens at all at the client, right?
Right. No, that's right. I couldn't have said it better myself, Colin. Thank you. I do want to point out, right, that server-side ad insertion has been around for the last 4 years. I mean, we were doing this. I think we implemented server-side ad insertion, one of our earliest major media customers, in 2011. It's just, it's taken a while to move away from kind of the predominant approach of client-side ad insertion, which really came from the desktop world, right? To really everyone more increasingly embracing server side, and and it's, when I said it's coming of age, it's finally at the point where there's enough consumption on these new platforms. There are there's the recognition of all the challenges in delivering consistent ad experiences across mobile, which has, as we talked, begun to eclipse desktop viewing. So, and then of course there's the rise of ad blockers. All of these things, right, leading to a much more acceptance and acknowledgement of server-side ad insertion as the approach, to the point where, the IAB has, in its vast 4.0 spec, which is currently open for kind of open to comment and should be ratified soon, and something that we've been involved with and contributing to. Actually legitimizes, finally in a standard, the server-side approach. You'll even see with kind of Apple TV's, fourth generation product or platform that while they don't explicitly preclude client-side ad insertion, all of their references and spec documents lead everyone to server-side ad insertion as the preferred approach. So, I don't want to paint with a broad brush in the sense that over the years, obviously, there's been a lot of ad-supported content delivery or video content delivery that's been done with a variety of different approaches. I think that there are a lot of smart people out there, both within the publisher side as well as a lot of the technology companies that support those publishers. But there's been a lot of hit or miss kind of approaches, and I think finally we're seeing and we'll see a lot more adoption for the server-side stitching approach that we've been driving for some time, and there'll be more than one approach, right, that works. But in the end, I don't think you're going to walk into any digital officer ad ops group that isn't looking at server-side ad insertion as the future for their ad-supported video businesses.
Indeed, and the great thing about server-side to me is just that it provides such a smooth playback experience for the user. And avoiding all of that to and fro. The great thing, of course, is once you eliminate all of that work that the client has to do. We talked earlier about the challenges of delivering to older cell phones and devices. Well, that pretty much goes away. If they can play video, then they can enjoy a great experience on that platform, right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I mean, we've had folks, it's not something we tout a lot, but we've had for years folks, playing back video with server-side stitched ads and content to, old BlackBerries and older Windows phones, even kind of these esoteric, Wi-Fi connected devices like there was a thing called the Clocky. I think it was this alarm clock with a video screen that could play back video.
Oh my goodness!
And, so there are tens of thousands of devices that can, as you said, as long as it can play back online video, it could play back ad-supported video.
And in a world of reaching as many eyeballs as possible to get that to monetize through advertising, that cannot be a bad thing, right?
No, it can't. I mean, I think it's important to realize that, again, there is still a lot of complexity out there, depending on the direction that is taken with respect to how you're, who's selling the ad, is it first party, direct sold, is it third party, is it programmatic, what are the dependencies, what are the data requirements, etc. What we've done is, so Unicorn Media, which was bought by Brightcove almost 2 years ago now, had been exclusively focused on what is now Brightcove Once, which is our server-side ad insertion product. Brightcove, as an 11-year-old company, has been focused on providing kind of end-to-end video management, delivery, and playback for years, and has really been often touted for its great player expertise and having leading desktop and mobile players on the market. And so what we did last year is we decoupled our player technologies from our overall video cloud product, which is kind of the end-to-end ingestion through playback system, including the metadata management, content management, etc., and created Brightcove Perform, which is our player management service that publishers can take advantage of independently just to get the leading HTML5 web player on the market, as well as our native mobile SDKs for Android and iOS, and now also for tvOS, which was just released. And we've taken the player technologies, and we've taken our server-side ad insertion Once technology and ensured that they were integrated together so that you could get the blended benefits of server-side ad insertion and the best of kind of controlling and customizing your player experience, on the client side. And beyond kind of just the obvious elements of what that implies, we also have a capability. It's a feature of Once called Once UX that allows anyone who is configuring our players to actually synchronize and manage a number of interactive features on the player with the server-side inserted ads. So you can do overlays and scrub bar blocking and countdown timers and skip ads, etc. So the two of these kind of capabilities, or I guess more than two capabilities, we've kind of pulled together in a solution that we have brought to market as Brightcove Lift. Fundamentally, because what we're looking at here is, while you can go through all the technical underpinnings and capabilities, in the end, what we're trying to do is provide an elevated experience that also results in revenue lift for our publishers.
So it sounds like using Brightcove Lift, I really don't lose any of the flexibility that I have with client-side insertion at all, and it sounds like I eliminate a lot of the problems inherent in client ad insertion. Is that about right?
Yeah, that is right. I will call out something that I'm sure members in the audience want to talk about, but before I do, I'll just point out that there is no silver bullet for everything, and there are hundreds of different ways and ad creatives and ad units that are out there that people are experimenting with. What we focused on is very much standards-based approach. So the most popular, most widely used kind of video ad capabilities that are out there, and so even providing the client pingbacks for reporting client-side data can all occur through our player technology, even though the ads are inserted on the server side. And it gives you the opportunity to collect the data on the server or on the client, or both, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. An area that I think some of the publishers certainly care about is VPaid ads, right? So the interactive ads, where often they're even sold on a cost per click or cost per action type of business model, and often as a result have premium associated with the CPMs. These are typically being done as kind of third-party ad networks, et cetera. In some cases, it's remnant ad fill, but most of the VPaid ad creative that's out there today is Flash based, right? And so the one thing we don't do today, because we're kind of forward-looking in terms of developing standards-based technology, is the Lift solution won't deliver server-side inserted Flash Swift ads, right? Because that's not how that works and how that technology works. However, HTML, HTML5 or HTML VPaid ads are out there, and I think the market overall is looking at kind of not to sing the dirge too soon, but they're looking at the death of Flash overall, right? Especially as even browsers advance and move away from, move towards a plugin free kind of environment. There will be more and more creative, for me, paid creative that shows up in HTML, and that is support that is being built into our players and into our server-side ad insertion product as well. So I want to call that out specifically because what I would say is with Brightcove Lift, you get, for premium publishers, you get pretty much everything you need. If you're reliant on Flash VPaid, it's not something we support today, but we also see that shifting to HTML5 VPaid, so that's where we'll focus our time and energy.
Indeed, and so I guess now would be a great time to talk about customers. Does it work?
Yeah, it does. It'd be one thing to speak so boldly about it without having the results, but certainly we've got a couple examples. We can't that we are willing to talk about. Not everyone likes to kind of share their logo, right? And we're very careful with how we speak to our customer, to customer use cases.
It's always such a challenge.
It is, but here's one where we've got a customer that I think is pretty exciting. Vox Media. A lot of people are familiar with them as a unicorn, if you will, in technology media terms. But just great content, exciting set of brands. They've acquired quite a number of different media properties. This, it's really interesting here. They used Brightcove Lift earlier this year. They started, and they were working with a different video platform at the time. A lot of their audience is, the majority of the audience is on mobile. And they had significant challenges in using the client-side player from the other provider on Android devices in terms of its playback and its ability to be compatible with kind of the ad insertion plugins that were being provided also from another major provider. And so what it was doing, going back to the first point we made, it was compromising the consumer experience, right? Where people were getting frustrated, they were getting a lot of bad feedback. And so what Vox Media did very boldly is they just shut off all ads on Android, right? So they're saying, look, for all our traffic on Android, which is substantial, until we solve this problem, we're just not going to monetize. So they shut off that entire revenue stream, so it went to zero. In shifting to work with us for their mobile video and ad delivery, both on iOS and Android, and Windows, I guess, as well, what they were able to do is use Lift, so the combination, again, of our HTML5 player and our server-side ad insertion capabilities to deliver a consistent video experience that was monetized, that seamless television-like experience through the browser, right, on mobile web, because they've taken a predominantly mobile web approach to mobile content delivery because of all the referral traffic they get from social, and they don't want to create any barriers with users having to download apps. They were able to turn advertising back on, and they have done that using Lift across about 85% of their mobile traffic. They still use some YouTube video kind of embedded players because they're optimizing kind of their search traffic by doing so, and their referral traffic. But for all of their own delivery, they're now using Brightcove Lift, and that went from zero monetization on Android to what they have today. So whereas we can't talk to specific numbers in terms of revenue and dollars, you can kind of look at their traffic and do the math. So it was a big win for them, and enabled them to actually start monetizing their traffic, which any publisher wants to do, right? Otherwise, it just becomes a cost center, not a profit center. So that's one case study.
I just want to focus in there on what Brendan Murphy said. I think what's significant is he not only called out the monetization, but he actually called out the fact that it improves the quality and the consistency of the video playback, just as we've been discussing. So
Yeah.
It seems like it really did help a lot.
Yeah, it did. We're very proud of that implementation. We've had before there was Lyft. Before there was Lyft, we were still delivering server-side ad inserted streams to a variety of customers who are using the native playback capabilities on their mobile devices, right? So not any specific player. With Lyft, they can utilize all the capabilities of our player technology as well, so that they can take advantage of the ad integrations, the analytics integrations, the custom UI, the support, and all of the interesting kind of features and functionality that are out there in the community. Our player, our HTML5 player, is built around Video.js, the open source project. So by taking that approach, it allows our developers on our customer side to actually leverage a number of really cool things that the developers around the world have created. So it's pretty exciting. There's a lot you can do with it that goes beyond monetization. But without the monetization, you won't survive or sustain the business.
Indeed. And you mentioned another customer?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about the fact that when we talked about ad blockers, we actually pointed out that such a large growth in ad block usage has occurred, and the year-over-year growth rate is significant. But the target audience, that most media publishers kind of focus on, right? The most coveted audience is the 18 to 34-year-olds, the millennials that are out there, and it is also the most coveted audience that is most highly indexed in terms of ad blocker usage, right? And so when you think about that, the potential impact that ad blockers are having on content publishers that deliver to that audience is dramatic. So we had one example I can share from earlier this year, where a very large broadcaster had a particular set of content properties, web and mobile, but most of their traffic was on web still, focused on a very technophile-oriented, millennial-oriented demographic, and they were having a significant ad blocker problem where close to 70 or 80% of their traffic was encountering ad blockers, right? So the entire revenue model for them was getting compromised. And a lot, we didn't talk about this, but a lot of publishers, sometimes take suboptimal approaches to combating ad blockers. Now that they know they exist, they'll sometimes put up a message and say, hey, if you want to watch our content, disable your ad blocker, right? And unfortunately, since we talked about the fact that the power is shifted to the consumers, unless you have very, very exclusive content and really loyal consumers, most consumers are going to say, all right, well, I'm out of here, right? And then you lose that consumer, you lose that audience. So what the customer wanted to do was mitigate the ad blocker usage, but still provide a great experience so that they didn't frustrate the consumer. And so what they've done is switch to using Brightcove Lift. And when a consumer has an ad blocker, they're still getting a seamless television-like experience of content, but the video ads are still being played. And now what they've been monitoring carefully is whether this would result in any kind of backlash from users. And there really hasn't been much backlash at all, because when the experience is seamless, and as long as the publisher is not abusing the consumer's attention and the consumer's permission by overwhelming them with ads or providing irrelevant ads, consumers don't seem to have a problem. But the net result for the publisher was that their revenue and ad views went up, as much as 50% after implementing Brightcove Lift. And so, again, you can do the math, for your own businesses, right, and see how significant an impact that would be.
That's pretty huge, 50%. Wow. It's a big number.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty exciting number.
Indeed. Well, I think we have a few questions here, so we're going to do jump into the Q&A for a couple of minutes.
Sure.
So if you have a question, if anybody has a question, please enter it at the question panel in the interface. One thing that's come up a lot this year, and I know we've just had a question about it here, is about programmatic. Does it actually work with programmatic?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that you know, obviously, if you ask folks in the ad tech community, what they've been talking about for the last 12 months has been, programmatic, right? And it's, I guess I should say 18 to 24 months. Programmatic means a lot of different things. So I think it's important to talk about, what it is we're looking at. So there's on one extreme end of programmatic, where you're looking at, one-to-one ads for every viewer out there. So, hundreds of thousands or millions of different ad creatives. And when you're doing real-time bidding across a very, open, large exchange, where, you make the bid transaction, seconds before the ad is delivered, that's one extreme, right? For most customers that we work with, they're kind of on the other end of the spectrum, and as they where they're doing direct first-party sold ads, and so those premium publishers are kind of on that end, but moving towards more adoption of programmatic. But by adoption of programmatic, they're still looking at a known universe of creative, because no one wants to compromise their high quality brand with an ad that comes from let's just call it a different class of advertiser, right? They're very, very protective of that consumer experience and of their brand equity. And so when they're moving to programmatic, they're doing so with a known universe of creatives, either with a private exchange or a limited open exchange, where there may be thousands of ads, different ad creatives, but not hundreds of thousands or millions of ads. And the reason that I point this out, right, is because in the approach we take for server-side ad insertion, in order to provide that high-quality, uncompromised experience, our server-side ad insertion technology once actually ingests both the content and the ads, and does all the content conditioning and ad conditioning in our cloud before doing any of the ad response, ad stitching. And what I mean by that is, to avoid that situation where you have a 1080p stream and a 720 ad, right, or worse, or when you don't have kind of the matched frames, so that you have kind of blips and hiccups in the continuity of the stream. All of those things compromise experience. So what we do is actually ingest all the content and the ads, and have those prepared so that when the user is requesting playback, we are delivering a dynamically constructed stream to them of ads and content. So to answer the question for programmatic, it works well when we have that known universe of ads and within the private exchanges or the limited open exchanges. And so yes, it does work with programmatic. And in fact, you get the same user data that you want to drive those programmatic decisions through the server side, or you can get even further granularity from client side if you're using our client integration with our player. What we don't do today is do the real-time bidding remnant kind of ad fill with completely open programmatic exchanges that have hundreds of thousands or millions of different ad units. I hope that was a clear enough answer. I know it's a complex topic.
It is a very complex topic, and I think you gave a great answer, very clear. And unfortunately, we're just about out of time. I'm sorry to all of those that had asked the question, and we'll try and get back to you with answers to those questions as soon as we can. But this has been a great discussion, Anil. Thanks so much for joining us here and talking about server-side ad insertion.
Yeah, thank you, Colin, and thank you, Greg, as well. I appreciate the opportunity.
And Greg, we turn it back over to you.
Well, Colin, thanks so much again for an excellent job moderating that discussion. And Anil, thanks so much for your great, fantastic insights on this important topic. I think everyone in the audience hopefully learned a great deal today about this important issue, and we're happy to have worked with you on this webinar. We have, as we said at the beginning, we'd like to announce a winner for our Roku streaming stick, and the winner of that stick is Sandy Paland. So Sandy, I'll be getting in touch with you shortly to make sure that we get that streaming stick out to you. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being attentive and taking part of the webinar. Again, everyone, thanks for attending. We look forward to having you with us next time for our next webinar produced by X Media Research and Endscreen Media. And again, Anil and Colin, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Greg. Bye-bye.